Welcome back. Last Tuesday, the Atlanta Zoning Review Board chose to deny approval for a proposed $55 million office building in the Old Fourth Ward. The board says the developer was unclear on certain aspects of the building plan. What on the surface appears to be a routine decision actually shows how city governments are the gatekeepers that determine if and how municipalities grow. When 60,000 people move to Atlanta all within a year's time, it affects traffic, building, and water, just to name a few. Smart growth requires smart individuals, and those individuals make up the collective known as the Atlanta Regional Commission, or ARC. The agency oversees planning within a 10-county region, everything from infrastructure, workforce development, land use, and natural resources. The ARC also handles transportation planning for a massive 18-county area, working with stakeholders at the federal, state, and local levels. With Atlanta as the 7th fastest growing metro in the nation and 29% of its population below the age of 20, planning today could prevent socioeconomic calamity tomorrow. Doug Hooker is the executive director of the ARC. He brings to the table not only a strong scientific background, but also a deep love of the community. Both shape his leadership philosophy, as you'll see in today's Executive Profiles.
So you were born in Moultrie, but then you Georgia. Moved to Cincinnati.
Yep, from the time I was about 2 years old until high school.
So you're out of high school now, and was it a decision to come to Georgia Tech? Was it a decision to come back to Georgia? Was it just one of those epiphanies?
I was down here November of my senior year in high school, right before Thanksgiving, as part of a group that was doing a college tour, primarily the historically black colleges. The person who was leading the tour knew I was interested in engineering, so they arranged for me to go over to Georgia Tech. I went home and I told my mom, I said, I'm going to Georgia Tech, which was, breathtaking because here's our oldest child going back to the place where she had left to get them away from the South. So,
a degree in mechanical engineering?
Right.
And then that wasn't enough education for you. You needed some more.
No.
What's the deal here? You're the one person in Atlanta that I've met who is 2 degrees from Georgia Tech and a degree from Emory?
Yeah.
I mean, that's remarkable.
When I became a supervisor and I was working more supervising people and also being exposed more to the business aspect of the company, I started with Georgia Power. I wanted to learn a lot more about business and grow kind of as a manager leader, and thought the MBA would be helpful, and it's proven very helpful. So,
chart your career for a few minutes, and don't be too humble about this, because you've been involved in so many major projects really for decades that have transformed the city.
I worked for part-time as a policy analyst at Georgia Power, looking at alternate energy technologies. I was the first 4-year degreed African-American engineer in the engineering department. I went to work for a company that was based in Decatur at the time called BioLab. They've since moved to Gwinnett County. In 4 years, I was head of director of finance and administration. So I learned a lot about business as a fairly young man still. So I left BioLab and went looking for what's next. I got hired by the new Commissioner of Public Works at the City of Atlanta. They had just created a deputy commissioner role, and he wanted somebody to come in, basically chief of operations for this, at that point in time, 1,000-person unit. And then a couple of years after I served as deputy commissioner, for a period of time, I became the interim commissioner, and then later on, the full-time commissioner. Well, and after that, I had my own management consulting firm for technical companies. And then I went back to the state. I went back into public service working for Governor Perdue, heading the State Road and Tollway Authority. And I was really proud of that time. It was a short period of time, but we did the groundbreaking work that showed the transportation planning agencies that we could think about having managed lanes. So the I-85 project and now the 75 projects that are coming along. We did the foundational work for that, studies for that. Back to the private sector, and then the ARC opportunity came calling, and now here I am.
I want to go to another side of you.
All right.
And that's your music side.
When I was in high school, as much as I loved the science and the math and did very well at it, my passion in my heart really was music. So when I was leaving high school or thinking about a graduation and which way to go in life and career, I was trying to decide whether I was going to go music or engineering. And so I decided to forego music and pursue engineering, but I couldn't ever leave it alone. And after years of not doing anything with it, several years ago, my wife bought me a used oboe. And after I got it back in shape, I started taking lessons again and playing with a community orchestra. And the way I've always kind of expressed a lot of deep emotion in my life is hearing music. But I had never attempted to try to actually write anything before. And I told my wife, because I kept waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning, and she said, well, you got to figure out something to do because you're keeping me awake. And so we started trying our hand at composition, and she would give me time after work every day and give me an hour, hour and a half to just sit down on the piano, and a note at a time I just started writing out what I was hearing in my head. And over time I eventually finished it, and was privileged to get the DeKalb Symphony Orchestra to try it out, premiere it, and it's been played several times since. So my first piece was a symphony.
So let me bring this kind of interview
Sure.
to closure and ask you about ARC as it relates to winning the future.
I put the question to the board to debate at one of our annual work session last year. How do we get to be a superlative region? Let's not just say we're trying to be great, but what do we want to be really good at, and what must we do to make that kind of a path? And put that challenge to them, and they took it up readily. And in debating and thinking about how do we try to invite other leaders and other community institutions to get engaged in making us a bigger, better region for the future, they came up with the theme of winning the future, and with 3 basic platforms for that: world-class infrastructure, developing an innovation economy, and being sure we have more healthy, livable communities. I mean, a lot of those are thematic with a lot of ARC's work, but what is very different about this is that instead of thinking about this as ARC's regional plan, we are now thinking of not ownership, but stewardship. And our job is to invite all members of community, regardless of where they come from, to be a part of owning and making this plan theirs, because it's our community collectively, it's not ARC's community. We really think we're onto an important a focus point for the region as a collective community. Think about how do we pull together to be sure that we're a strong, competitive, and attractive region for our children and our grandchildren in years to come.
According to the ARC, the Atlanta metropolitan statistical area gained about 80,000 jobs from May 2014 to May of this year. That's the 4th highest total in the nation. This past year also saw the population of the 10-county region swell to 4.3 million people. Gwinnett County was a popular location. It added nearly 1,600 residents, the most out of any other county last year.